Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Meet the Specialist. My name is Caroline Ellis, and I am the Legislative Specialist for Gun Violence Prevention. Um, I've been a volunteer and a volunteer leader with a few different gun violence prevention organizations for about the last 8.5 years. And last summer, I joined the Legislative Action Committee of the League of Women Voters. Um, with me tonight is Jen Muroff. She is the chair of the committee, and she's been doing this for a lot longer than I have, so I may throw some of my questions back to her. But she's also going to be helping me with the slides and monitoring the chat. So next slide, please. Okay, as I mentioned, I'm the legislative specialist for gun violence prevention, and I'm one of about 20 legislative specialists who drive the Massachusetts League's advocacy at the State House. Other specialists focus on areas such as voting rights, education, immigration, and a range of other issues. We monitor a lot of bills. We select these bills and decide if the League will officially support or, in some cases, oppose those bills. And we follow those bills over the 2-year legislative cycle. Some of the bills we support or oppose are ones that have been refiled from a previous session. We, the specialists, submit written testimony or provide oral testimony at hearings. And we also help mobilize the membership of the League of Women Voters in Massachusetts by crafting and sharing calls to action that anyone can take at a certain time, whether it's asking a legislator to co-sponsor a bill or asking that a legislator vote yes on the bill once it goes to a vote. And we also sometimes organize education events related to our specialty. And we are guided by policies set at our convention. Next slide, please. So we choose bills to support or oppose based on how they align with the League of Women Voters of the United States and the League of Women Voters in Massachusetts. I'll get more into that in just a minute. And we also use these questions to guide us. Well, the first one, does the National or State League have a position to support or oppose it? And these other questions, like, does it have broad policy implications across the Commonwealth? Does it have strong support from coalition partners? That's a big one. And we also think about, do we have an obligation to support it? And can adding the name of the League of Women Voters in Massachusetts kind of move the needle to get the bill across the finish line, or if we oppose it, to stop it? Okay, so next slide, please. If you go to the League of Women Voters in Massachusetts website, which is lwvma.org, and look at the advocacy tab, you can find our supported and opposed legislation for the 2025-2026 session. So far, that is. Some of these are refiles from previous sessions, and some have been added just in the last few months. We started voting on bills in February, I think, and we have a few more tomorrow. So you can check the columns on the right side of the chart to see if we voted to support or oppose the legislation, and also see if there's written testimony. So I'm not going to go through all of these now, but it's that section of the website. It is in alphabetical order by topic, so you can see all the ones that we're officially supporting or opposing. Okay, next slide, please. I mentioned a minute ago that we look at league positions on the issues when we choose our bills. And there are two guiding documents we use, one national one and one Massachusetts specific one. The national one shown here is the Impact on Issues, a guide to public policy positions of the League of Women Voters. And that one reflects the program adopted by the most recent convention of the national convention. And Impact on Issues is updated following each biennial convention. So that's one of them. And the next one is Where We Stand. And that's the collection of the League of Women Voters in Massachusetts positions with a brief summary and action taken under each position. both of these documents, the impact on issues and the where we stand, are available on the League of Women Voters Massachusetts website under the advocacy tab. It says positions, I think. Okay. So actually it's under league positions, I'm sorry. Okay, when does the Legislative Action Committee act? So right there is a timeline that you can look at. So I will tell you right now that right now we are in the thick of selecting our bills. We started a few months ago and we're continuing to do that this month. And then the action alerts that the membership can take and really anyone in your networks can take will come as the bills move along. We are monitoring the legislature through various tools that update us on the progress of the bills. One of the big ones we use is called Mass Track. So all of the specialists follow their bills through Mass Track, and it's like a website where you can pick bills and set up alerts for it. State House News Service is also a really helpful one with just like if you're like me and you like seeing just a nice, neat prose about what's happening. It's a lot of the storytelling of what happens in the State House. Okay, next one. So this is what we ask our legislators to do in chronological order. Right now, I've asked my senator to co-sponsor our two bills, and then which are both in committee. And this is what any specialist may ask the membership to do at various times. And again, that's usually sent out in a call to action via email. And we always want the legislators to hear from their own constituents. So the focus is often on asking people to contact their legislators to move the bill forward or stop the bill in some cases. Okay, next. Okay, so I will say, I'm very glad to say that the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts has a good history of supporting common sense gun safety legislation in recent years. In 2024, during the last legislative cycle, the League strongly backed an act modernizing firearm laws, which was signed by Governor Healy in July. And then in the 2017-2018 session, the League supported the Extreme Risk Protective Order Bill, which was signed into law in the spring of 2018. And when major gun safety organizations study the states, which ones are safest and have the best laws, as I'm sure you know, Massachusetts is usually at the top, if not near the top. So that said, here is what the State League is taking a position on for the next 2 years. We have two bills and a ballot question. So I'll go tell you a little bit more about each bill in a minute. The first one is called an act relative to firearm industry accountability and gun violence victims' access to justice. The next one is an act to promote safe firearm storage education and increase the well-being of students. And finally, that wonderful law I just mentioned that Governor Healy signed in July, an act modernizing firearm laws. There is a ballot question that will be on the ballot in 2026 to repeal that law. So we are we want to keep that law. So those are our big three priorities as of now. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the first bill that I'll tell you a little bit about is called an act relative to firearm industry accountability and gun violence victims' access to justice. The lead sponsors are Representative Frank Moran and from the Senate, Senator Cynthia Cream. And I can tell you, as of this afternoon, it had a little over 20 co-sponsors, which is, we like to see that. And this bill would do a few things. It would establish a firearm industry standard of responsible business conduct. And the other one the other big piece of it is that it would permit individuals or the Attorney General of Massachusetts to seek justice in court if they can prove that they suffered harm as a result of a gun industry member's knowing violation of the standard of conduct, or if they violated a state law. And I can tell you, if you don't already know, that holding the firearm industry accountable is a big priority for Andrea Campbell. Next slide. So going into what problems this bill solves. So the laws regulating the gun industry have not been updated since the 1960s, and you don't have to look very far in the news to know that this crisis continues to grow. And the ATF, which is the federal agency that inspects firearm dealers and members of the firearm industry, they are very underfunded and very understaffed, and I don't think that is going to improve anytime soon. So gun dealers often go years without inspection. I looked at some studies, like the actual ATF reports, and their goal is typically to inspect a gun dealer once every 3 years, which, and if you think about like what restaurants and elevators have to, what their standards are for inspection, that doesn't seem like a lot. But due to their staffing issues, that often doesn't happen. And sometimes gun dealers go up to 10 years without being inspected. And another, like also in the ATF report, I found that in 2024, they requested an additional 183 positions for the job, for the role of inspecting the gun dealers, because that's how thin they were spread to get the job done. So it's because of that situation, there isn't a lot of incentive for members of the firearm industry to do the right thing. It's, it can be a race to the bottom. And of course, there are going to be some very responsible businesses out there, but there isn't a lot of incentive for trying to be part of the solution. And this bill can do something about that. Another big factor is that in 2005, the US Congress passed the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, and it has widely been interpreted to give sweeping immunity to the gun industry from most civil lawsuits. And then victims of gun violence and their families, they can't get justice in court. They can't hold the gun industry accountable for their roles in gun violence. So next slide, please. This bill would solve the problem by establishing the standard of reasonable business conduct, by making sure that the gun industry complies with the gun safety laws, and requiring them to have security standards like alarms, just some of the things that might stop a gun from ending up in the hands of a straw purchaser or an underage person or someone who is otherwise not able to, who is otherwise prohibited from purchasing firearms. It also has to do with advertising. Like, is this member of the gun industry trying to target children in its advertising? So again, it's about incentivizing the gun industry to be part of the solution, because we don't want irresponsible members of the industry to get a competitive advantage. And of course, allowing victims and their families to have their day in court. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about why this is important for Massachusetts. While the PLCAA, which is that law I mentioned, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, it does provide a lot of immunity, but there are a few really narrow and important exceptions in which a lawsuit can proceed if a gun violence victim can prove that that a member of the firearm industry knowingly violated a state law. And 9 states so far, not Massachusetts yet, I hope yet, 9 states have expanded accountability for the gun industry. And I mentioned earlier that Massachusetts is frequently praised for its great gun laws, but major gun violence prevention organizations, when they do their studies, a few of the things that they've given Massachusetts like lower marks for, like if it's a report card, are the absence of gun industry accountability and also the inability of victims to access justice. And those are 2 shortcomings in Massachusetts gun laws that would be fixed by passing this bill. Okay. Should I pause here and just see if there are any questions so far about that bill?
Sure.
Okay. You can also keep going too. That just seemed like a logical stopping point, so. Okay, onward. All right. The next one is an act to promote safe firearm, excuse me, let me have a sip of water. An act to promote safe firearm storage education and increase the well-being of students. And the lead sponsors for this one are Senator Jason Lewis and Representative Marjorie Decker. And this bill would mandate the creation of model content regarding the safe storage of firearms to prevent unauthorized access by children and teenagers. So in case you didn't know, Massachusetts has, like a lot of other states, has what's called the CAP law, CAP for Child Access Prevention. It is the law that guns have to be locked with the gun and the ammunition stored separately. And if a child gets their hands on an unsecured firearm, the adult owner is held responsible. Not every state has that, but Massachusetts does. And this bill is about increasing awareness of that, and also a few other things. It mentions the model content will highlight the risks associated with unsecured weapons and suggest actions for everyone in the community to boost safety. And I say actions for everybody because this isn't just about telling gun owners to lock up their guns. It's about opening the conversation. And I can tell you, as a mother of 3 youngish children, that every time I take them for a physical, I get a little handout that says just different safety tips, like have them wear a helmet when they ride a bike, keep meds locked away, always ask about the presence of guns when they visit another person's home, whether it's a play date or visiting family that you don't see very often. So this isn't just about telling gun owners to lock up their guns. It's about encouraging parents and caregivers to ask about the presence of firearms and ask if they are secured. So really normalizing that conversation, the way you would say, like, oh, my kid has allergies, or my kid isn't the best swimmer. Do you have a pool? So, all right, next slide. I think I got ahead of
I have a question,
Yes.
Caroline.
Yes.
This is Margaret.
Hi, Margaret.
It's why is the wording of the act to increase the well-being of students, but then it goes on to talk about children and teenagers. Why wasn't, I don't understand what the inclusion of the word students was there.
Okay, this is probably my fault because I think I was I went off the deep end a little bit, and I think what I said was coming for other slides, because if we go to the next slide, this would have the Department of Secondary Education, Elementary and Secondary Education, create information that is then shared via school districts to families. So it's the students is like all K-12 students in public schools in Massachusetts.
Right,
We
but
have the
aren't there
same-
children who aren't students?
I
Like
guess
3-year-olds or 4-year-olds?
that's true.
So why, that's what my question is. What I'm just asking, I'm not, I just think it's
Okay,
odd that they didn't say children.
that's true. I guess just because of the vehicle through which
Mhm.
the the medium for the message. It's a good question.
Yeah,
So it would go through DESI, like, because that's the media. I agree, Caroline. I think it's the medium for DESI. Like, who do they have access to? K through 12.
that's
Right.
true, but the bill then, like if I have a 2 or 3-year-old,
Mhm.
I'm not covered by this law according to that word
True.
because
Access to
But I
education
think, but
materials.
also,
Yeah.
they're not students.
okay, that's
I'm
fair.
just curious. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's something to consider in the written testimony.
It
I don't
is,
know how it would be addressed, I guess, through your physician, if your physician
right,
had
'cause
that, but specific to this law. Yeah, but that's a
Right.
good point, Margaret. Yeah.
Yeah, it struck me odd that they used the word students and then only talked about and then talked about children.
Mhm.
And I know from what I've heard that, gun accidental gun shootings kill a lot of 2 and 3-year-olds,
Yes, they do,
and they are not students. So,
correct.
well, I guess they could be, but they're probably not. Okay, all right, let's go on.
All right, what problem does this bill solve? Okay, the first one, really all of these are worth sharing. Massachusetts does have a strong cap law, but research shows that only about a third of gun owners in states with those laws, like nationally, are aware of their state's law. So, which makes me wonder how many of them are not following that law. And there you go. Estimated 54% of gun owners do not lock their firearms securely. A few years ago, firearm tragedies became the leading cause of death of children and teens in the US. It passed car accidents. So it is the number one cause of death. It's horrible, but like I always want that to sink into people. So this is about saving lives. And a lot of children live in homes where there is at least one loaded and unsecured gun. Next slide, please. And here's why schools should especially be interested in this topic. Of course, they're always concerned about the well-being of children and what's best for kids. But the link between a child's access to a gun and school shootings cannot be denied. Right there, 76% of school shooters under the age of 18, they got the gun from their own home. One of the mantras in like gun violence prevention groups when something horrible happens is we have to keep asking, how did the child get the gun? And same thing with suicide. The link between a child's access to a gun and the suicide rate can also not be ignored. And I think, Margaret, you just mentioned like the unintentional shootings, when a kid just finds a gun under a bed. So there are so many reasons to get the word out about safe storage. From the school shooting point of view, from the unintentional shooting point of view, from the suicide point of view. So this could be a very life-saving measure just to share the information, to remind families to do this and also to ask, because this isn't just information for gun owners, it's information for everybody to normalize conversations about gun safety. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so how will this bill solve the problem? Well, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE, will create the model content. So that will standardize the message, that will take the burden off the districts, off teachers who have a lot to do. And also school districts are well equipped to raise awareness through their broad outreach to families and staff. Most m- this is a little bit of a generalization, but most people have a pretty good relationship with their school district, or at least a comfortable one. So they might read the message, they would trust that they have the best interests of the families involved. I can tell you, as a parent of school age children, the districts, they send information about, like, oh, does your child have access to dental care? Vaping is bad. Just that schools are constantly sending out messages about health and safety of the children, and this is one more thing that they can do that will help reach families. And also, these websites today that school districts use, you can immediately translate things. They have apps, but they have so many tools that make a message accessible to families in different languages, which is very necessary in Massachusetts. Okay. Next one. Okay. Why should we pass the bill? Again, it's geared toward gun owners and gun owners to create the culture of safety. The Massachusetts Association of School Committees, MASC, passed a resolution in November to recommend that every district create content that explains the danger of unsecured firearms and share it with families. This bill would guarantee it. It would also take the job away from school districts, like in a good way. It would just, the state would create one standardized message. And there's also really no cost associated with the bill. A couple of things. I mentioned the number of co-sponsors for the first bill. This one has 7 co-sponsors so far across the 2 chambers. And I think it's worth mentioning that it has bipartisan support. And and I mentioned it has the support of the school committees. I will also add that I found out, I kid you not, about an hour ago, I haven't even told Jennifer this yet. This bill has the support of the MTA. That's the Massachusetts Teachers Association. A friend like texted me and told me about it. I'm like, what? And I went to their website, and sure enough, there it was. So the MTA supports it. So that's pretty nice. So this is one that has the potential to let us work with other groups, teachers, school community members, etc. Okay, next slide. Okay, last but not least, certainly not least, as I mentioned, the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts supported an act modernizing firearm laws during the last legislative session, and there is already a ballot question to repeal that law. So a yes vote would uphold the act modernizing firearm laws. And I will say that we are in dialogue with some of the other coalition groups about how to make sure that that law stays the law. And we will be taking action. There will be calls to action. We don't quite know what it will look like yet. It is early. It's never too early, and I can tell you the other side is already mobilizing. But the Mass Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence is doing something. I'm with a part of a smaller, newer gun violence prevention organization that has already had an entire meeting devoted to this topic just last week. So there will be action regarding that. So, so ways you can help with these bills, with any of our bills, is you can come to the Day on the Hill in September, and our ask then will be that we get the bills out of the Joint Committee favorably. And other ways you can help, you can keep reading the monthly action newsletter. I think following on social media is also really helpful too. We are still looking for a legislative specialist to be the natural resources person. But just keep an eye on the action alerts and follow them when you can, and you can share them with your network. And come to our events, which you're already doing, and I really appreciate your being here. And you can also come to that day on the Hill and bring some friends. Okay. And that is all I have for the moment. So thank you again for coming. If anyone has any questions, I will take some.
Yeah. Hi, thanks, Carolyn, for that very good overview of the legislature. So I'm curious about the ballot question. Often they are phrased in a way that's very confusing to voters so that they don't really know what they're voting for. And I know that the group putting this forward wants to repeal that act. And yet you said that a yes vote upholds the law. So I'm curious about
I had the same reaction, like because if they're trying to repeal it seems counterintuitive to me. But when we reach out to people, we will make it very clear, like,
Yeah.
yes on this question, no on this question. And I appreciate that on the ballots it says like a yes vote does this, a no vote does this. So
yeah, it's
Yeah,
confusing.
it's a many stage process. So the Secretary of the Commonwealth hasn't even outlined the dates for 2026 yet. So it's like there are numerous steps to the process and each stage. So once the Secretary of the Commonwealth certifies the question and the wording, that will be key, but we just don't have the dates for that yet. But we'll keep reaching out to the Secretary of the Commonwealth and see if we can get any more information.
Okay, thanks very much.
I have a question, and I'm trying to remember. There is a public health doctor in the area who talks about gun violence as a public health issue. We had him one time come and talk. He was very good. Do any of you know who he is? I'd have to go look him up in our past documents. I think he lives maybe in, I want to say Newton or Needham or somewhere.
He lives in Brookline, and once you said it, I was like, David who? He spoke in Needham, because I invited him and ran the event, but it was, but I can definitely get you the info.
Right. Well, I was just going to recommend him. What was striking about him was that he was not anti-gun ownership. Because that's all what you always run into, is that, you're against a gun. He was saying that he made the analogy that when somebody put poison or something into the Tylenol in a drugstore in Chicago, they didn't ban Tylenol. They did safety measures, the different the adult caps, so that you couldn't get them open, so that children couldn't open them easily. And when it was noted that how many children died in car accidents because they were not restrained in car seats, they didn't ban cars, they made safety seats for them. And so he uses that as the analogy, and he was lobbying for better gun locks on handguns.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it's David Hemingway. David Hemingway
right.
at Harvard Injury Control Research Center.
Yeah. And what was interesting about our meeting was we did it in conjunction with one of the local temples, and it was very well attended. And it was very well attended by some people in red hats who came and kind of sat in the back and they didn't cause any trouble, but they came. And I was in my role as introducing and then going to do something. I happened to go to the back of the room, so I was standing behind them. And what they were saying to each other was, this is ridiculous. No child is strong enough to pull the trigger on a gun. And so they were saying that, everything he was saying, basically they didn't want to believe him because they're gun owners. I was astounded that they would even that's where they went. But I would recommend him if ever you're talking to anyone who wants to have a speaker. He was very good.
Thank you.
The League of Women Voters of Brookline a few years ago also had a speaker for it, but I think it was somebody else. But our local league has been very interested in gun violence for a long time, and we've passed a couple of warrant articles at town meeting related to that, and have another one.
Well,
Yep.
good. Well, thank you for working on that.
Where is that, Janice? At Brookline?
Yep, Brookline.
Carol? Carol, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to say that the Grandmothers Against Gun Violence Cape Cod has a regular rally on the 14th day of every month in Hyannis at our big airport rotary where all of our rallies take place. League members are often there as supporters, and several of the members of the Grandmothers Against Gun Violence are also league members. So we have a lot of good sharing back and forth. I was curious.
I have some friends who have gone to that. So
Oh, great. Oh, that's great. I was curious about is it September 18th, the league's lobby day?
Yes.
Okay, and that would include a few different priority areas for us to be lobbying on.
Right.
Is there a lobby day, do you know, for specifically gun violence prevention bills?
Not yet. I will tell you both of these bills, which I meant to say earlier, what are both in their committees right now. So that's, I think once they move a little further along,
Okay,
I will
great. Thanks.
let people know for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Nan?
So on a different direction, but it has to do with gun violence prevention, I'd like to take any opportunity I can to share with people the experience of a group in Falmouth that has been concerned about what happens when police guns are replaced and the old ones are disposed of. In Falmouth, we finally got people to speak up and say that we did not want those police guns to go into circulation, to the point that the town has been covering the cost that would be acquired if they had been traded as part of the purchase. I would imagine that many of you, well, I imagine that the rest of you are all living in towns where your police guns are going into circulation. Some of these are AR-15s, which cannot be bought by somebody with a LTC. Some of them, I'm not sure what the status, some of the handguns also cannot be bought by mere mortals. We also had some of the shotguns destroyed. So I'd love to give you some more information about this. Friends of mine have been very surprised to know that their town guns were going into circulation. It's of concern because there was a study for 14 years of 52,000 police guns that were in circulation, showed up in crime scenes, several of them being used in homicides, one a homicide against a child. So I would really like you to consider what's going on in your towns and get in touch if you would like. And Caroline knows how to get in touch with me if you want to. And I also want to say, yes, show up with us in Hyannis on the 14th of every month. June's going to be particularly interesting because that June 14th has gotten some traction. Yes.
Yeah.
So that, and then we go out to lunch and we have a chance to to get together and to share our concerns and our joys and our whatever. So that'd be great.
Nan, can you give a little bit more information? So how is Falmouth preventing them, these police guns from going into circulation? Are they, yeah,
They're destroyed.
they're just,
Oh, so, well, it's gets a little complicated. We basically lobbied our select board to create a policy, which is not as strong as I would like, but you know, you take the steps you can so that the town manager can decide if they're going to be destroyed. So then we needed to lobby the town manager and educate him on the situation. And that was when we got the shotguns destroyed. We took it to town meeting, and town meeting voted overwhelmingly to destroy the semi-automatic rifles, the AR-15s. Unfortunately, we had a flaw in the way we wrote that law, that town bylaw. So although it didn't pass, it made enough impression on people that they're still talking about it, and it gives us the energy to get the town manager, who still has the right to destroy them, And the handguns that we replaced this year are about to be destroyed, except for the ones that they allowed the town cops to buy back, which is not great. But anyway, we're getting 18 of them destroyed, which is a step in the right direction. It's not the heaviest lift, but it takes some focus and some energy and some commitment.
I'm confused. Why does the town allow the ones to be bought back to go stay in circulation? Are they buying them as handguns for their own staff, or are the police buying them for their personal use?
Margaret, that's a great question. So what happens is the town, when they dispose of them, if they're not destroyed, they need to get processed through a gun dealer. Our police chief understood that many of his officers wanted to own the guns that they had been having on their person for the last 10 years. So he allowed them to identify which those would be, so that when they were traded back through the licensed dealer for the town to get credit for the purchase of the new guns, that they could purchase those back if they chose to. Now, there are towns such as Bedford where the police chief said definitely no, he did not want his officers to be able to buy them back. Every town, it's different. That's why it's hard to
Okay,
make.
can I just stop you for a minute? So why would a policeman do that? Why is that because he wants the gun for his own personal use, not for his service revolver?
Right. Yeah. Or maybe he wants to sell it, or maybe he wants to sell it in, I don't know, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, where they're kind of desirable. It's really kind of sexy to have a police gun. There's a whole bunch.
Really?
Seriously, there's a whole bunch. Look online. There's a whole bunch of we sell you used police guns. I mean, and then you lose control. The only way you have control is if you get them destroyed.
Yeah.
And you know that they're really not going to be misused.
How are they destroyed? Like, do they go somewhere, or what's the
Caroline, that's a great question. They are destroyed by the state police, who has and there's a certain element of trust that has to go on with this, but
yes.
I'm convinced that that is and they're not taken apart and sold in parts the way you have heard some things happen. The state police do the total destruction so that no parts can be recycled and put back into circulation. In Massachusetts, other states like Kentucky prevent you from destroying any guns, but and and then I'm waiting right now for the report back from our chief, from our police, to know that this has actually happened to those 18 handguns that they committed publicly to destroy this time. And then I will chase those through the state police and make sure that they got destroyed.
Well, thank you for doing all of that.
Well,
That's
then
a
I
really
learned something.
good-
I didn't
Yeah,
know about this.
So, I mean, wherever you are, your town is putting guns into circulation. It's done basically in every town in Massachusetts.
Except Bedford, right?
No, Bedford, they put them into circulation, but the cops are not allowed to buy them back through that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and towns say, well, you know, we're throwing away money. We can't afford to do that. We can't afford to forego this cost. But when you think of the cost of gun violence, as we know, it's
Yeah.
outrageous. You know, the way we look at cost is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
No, thanks, Nan. Would you be willing to put your email in the chat if folks want to contact you?
I'm happy to do that. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Nan. All right, thank you, Caroline. That was wonderful.
Thank you everyone for coming. I appreciate your advocacy, your willingness to learn about these bills. So
Yeah, thank you for having this. This is wonderful, and for the league support for this and other important bills. I just love the league. It just is such an important voice, and it's taken seriously because they know that there's a lot of research that goes into it. It's great.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
Night. Thank you.